Timmy of Race on Main is telling us to talk to you all about Design Mind Consulting and Cosfol.
The gig economy. This is a big, big thing.
Yeah, it's like this new term, I guess, describing sort of like the workers out there who aren't really working under the sort of dictatorship of some of the big companies. They're out on their own.
Following their passions.
They're following their passion. So Design Mind Consulting, it should be a great show. Good morning, Philadelphia, and welcome to another edition of Race on Main Street, where fun is the priority. So check us all out at raceonmain.com. Stu's laughing over here. I thought that might get his attention.
It got my attention.
Yeah, so
fun.
Everybody has a different definition of fun.
That's true. And as we shoot this show, we run through the Jewish holidays.
Yeah,
is being shot right in the midst of this, so there's a lot of fun there.
They're not that fun.
Well, begging to not be killed in the next year is.
Yeah.
I know last year was rough. I maybe wasn't as good as I should have been. Please don't kill me this year. Is basically but we're not supposed to do religion or politics, so let's just get to the.
I like politics.
Well, in terms of politics, in these past couple of days, I think
have an impeached president.
It's important that we start brushing up on our Ukrainian because you're going to need to be speaking that next year.
Maybe.
Or we'll have an impeachment. It's one or the other. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just read.
And here we go being political.
Well, that's okay. We're just sort of reporting on the news, not reporting on opinions. But I guess opinions have to come through there. I guess on some
it's kind of hard to keep it.
Well, you know what? All news now is editorialized.
There is no. You're right. There's no journalism.
So,
we're as guilty as the next people.
You know
for
what?
That,
but
we're certainly not journalists.
I will say this: is that the news that I usually read is from the BBC.
Yes,
I always say
you are. Every morning in Starbucks, you eat the cheese sticks and read the news.
That's right.
Yes.
And that to me, and I don't read the New York Times and that, but there are a handful of journalistic approaches to news, and I think like that one is one of them.
I think the BBC is at least for the the BBC One is definitely.
Yeah, you're getting the new. They're saying, hey, there is a army walking across the desert there. They don't give their opinion
on that. Yeah,
about, right.
It's journalism, and it's international journalism.
Yes,
so
very
you're
much so.
Getting
from everywhere
reported on what's going on in the United States as from the British perspective, I guess. So that's
which is kind of interesting because what I found most interesting about what's going on the last few days are the White House just basically said, hey, we're not cooperating with anything.
Yeah.
You can have whatever impeachment you want. We're closing up all the windows and doors. Have a good day. I found that like me laughing to myself.
Well, I think that what we always having been through law school and whatnot,
right.
And studied some of the decisions of the Supreme Court through the years, and
right.
the conservative versus liberal nature of the court, like all things, it has its ups and downs through the years. But having, I'm certainly not an expert. I don't practice law anymore, and I never proclaimed to really know what I was doing when I was practicing law, let alone
now
constitutional law or anything like that. But it strikes me that we've had a good 245-year run with this experiment of democracy, and now it's over.
It is surely changing.
Now we're it's hopefully it'll be gentle as we move into
a kingdom.
I assume fascism before we go back to just having a monarch.
Yeah, I mean it is really, really. I would say from a historical perspective, and I don't mean this in a good way, but it is a fantastic circumstance and set of details that are just fascinating. And I think 20 years from now they'll look back like, what in the hell was going on then?
I hope so.
What was their thought?
I remember vividly. I have very. I'm laughing because I can see the phone in the picture. I'm sorry. I remember I have very few vivid memories of law school.
Right.
I mean, it was a blur. But I remember my second semester of my first year of law school when Dr. Robert Reinstein, he was my constitutional law professor. At that time, he went on to be the dean of the law school. And we flipped the page over, and the case that we were going to read that day was United States versus Nixon.
Right.
And his point, which stuck with me, and I will never articulate it in the same eloquent way that he did, was think about the history of mankind vis-a-vis the ruling class.
Right.
And then read that title again, the United States, the people,
right,
versus the president. The people took the president to court.
Right.
Okay. Now put it in the context of, King John back
Right.
in, the 1200s.
Uh-huh.
The people, no, right, exactly.
Right.
So in the history of mankind, it took us, depending on your
right.
proclivities, it took us somewhere between 200,000 and 6,000 and 200,000 years to get to the point where we could say, hey, our rulers
right.
can be called to
right.
task.
They have to be, right, they have to answer to
and
us.
that case was 1974.
Right, and now
okay?
it's not 2000.
So 2636, 45 years later.
We have a president tearing up those pages. And the crazy thing is, and we can maybe leave it with this, and it is, I mean, it's laughable, is that somehow it's being allowed to happen. You know what I mean? Like the president and the White House are saying, we're not answering to anybody.
Right, and why is it being allowed to happen? I got one word: Congress.
Yeah, well,
Congress needs to do its job.
well, that's a whole, that's really
Congress
where it
doesn't
lies.
do its job. When Congress starts doing its job again, then the country will move forward. And until that time, we're dead in the water.
It seems it's.
Speaking of dead in the water, no.
Nah.
But actually, speaking in terms of the
Evolution.
the evolution of the United States
Right.
and the way things progress, we're going to hear today about the gig economy.
Right.
And I have the European name in my head, but I'm going to take my best shot. This is Ann Cosfol, who is going to teach us all about the gig economy. So Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
And thank you. It's, I mean, really, let's just, when Sarah, one of our producers, talked about this topic, I'm rambling on to her about what I think this is. And I don't think I was really close with it, but yet I still feel like I was, in the room.
Right.
So you hear the term gig economy, and I think folks who are at least tuned into computers, they start to have some thoughts as to something related to like the internet, computers, technology. So tell us.
That's not right.
What's that?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Like a gigabyte. That's what I think of.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's why. So please clear it up for us.
Yeah. So the gig economy really came into being as that term. There's always been people like this, but it came into that term around around 2008 when we were having the downturn in the economy, and also around that time when millennials were coming into the workforce and wanted to be independent workers. So a gig worker is like an independent worker. Mm-hmm. And so what happened with the economic downturn is that people were being laid off from their companies left and right. And sometimes they would turn around the very next day and come back in as a consultant. And you see with General Motors right now, people are out on strike because this is happening. They're losing their benefits, they're losing their 401k, all of those kinds of things. And they're brought back in as a consultant. At that time, these people started to call this their latest gig. I guess they were channeling their inner rock star, right? So this was like their latest gig of what they were doing. But as a result of that, people really started losing that feeling of working for a company from cradle to grave. Companies weren't that for them anymore, and they were really taking ownership for their own financial and career growth. Then you had the millennials coming in, and the millennials, these are kids that grew up with technology. They're used to working where they want to work, when they want to work, how they want to work, and the cubicle 9-to-5 job was just something that they were either painfully unfamiliar with or just not interested in. but they didn't feel like they could go out and sell themselves as a consultant or a freelancer at that point in time. So you see a lot of millennials take jobs with companies, but they really don't have any loyalty to that company. If you look at a resume for a millennial, it's bouncing every 1 to 2 years, right? Which is making other companies uncomfortable about hiring them, but they're only trying to get some experience until they can do their own gig, right? So that's really what they're doing. And when you think about these people, it does focus around technology as well. Like if you want to think about the kind of gig workers that are out there sort of right off the top of everybody's head, it's going to be a web designer. It's going to be a technology person. It's going to be content writers. It's going to be editors. It's going to be anybody that can do those things independent of working for a company.
It's interesting because I guess some of the folks, or a lot of it in terms of this new millennial force that's out there, are much more interested, what I'm going to call in the lifestyle side to things, than you offering me medical or a 401k plan.
Right.
I'd much rather be able to work at Starbucks on my laptop in the hours that I want to, be very effective because that suits me, as opposed to coming there being stuffed into a cubicle, but oh yeah, I get this 401k plan, not interested.
Right. The other thing that it helps that gig workers can do is they can pick what they want to do now, right? They can pick their projects, they can pick the companies that they want to work for. They very often, especially with millennials, they're driven by their passion for what they think is important in the world. So you'll see them go after those kinds of projects and those kinds of companies as well.
All right, so your company, Design Mind Consulting, so
Correct.
It's designmindconsulting.com. There's Instagram, Facebook, everything related to Design Mind Consulting. What is it? What is it real? What are you helping folks
Where do you
with?
fit in?
Yeah, where do I fit in?
exactly? Yeah.
So I became a gig worker a year ago. I just had my 1-year anniversary as a gig worker, and that was after losing 2 jobs in 2018.
Oh.
Both companies had financial problems. They laid off entire departments. And I had worked for a lot of different types of companies, so small ones and large ones that were really structured, ones that were really flexible. But the thing that I never had was sort of control over my own destiny, right? I obviously didn't have job security because I lost 2 jobs in 1 year. I didn't have the ability to make my own decisions about things that I thought were important for clients or product. Like, you really are there executing on somebody else's plan. And that's what I didn't want to do anymore. So I created Design Mind Consulting, and what we do is we work with companies to really align their digital strategy with their business goals. So somebody will say to you, we want a new website, right? But the digital strategist takes a step back and says, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to attract more customers? Are you trying to move more e-commerce online so that you can scale down in the stores? Like, there's a whole host of things that you have to consider other than just updating your website. So we help them think through all of that. And we're also made up strictly of gig workers. There's no employees. We're all independent. In my career, I have met some brilliant, like-minded people, and they just have wild, crazy skills. They're so good. They're user experience researchers, they're designers, they're developers, they're systems architects. I don't have to hire any of those people. They collaborate with me on these projects, and then we all help each other on our other client projects. So if they need a strategist, they can call me into a client that they have. If I need an architect, I call them into a project that I have. So none of us has to hire anybody. And it's, it's sort of like a collective. We all have our skill set. I don't do branding, but I work with a group, Wavemakers Group, and they do a lot of my work for me. And they will help organizations position themselves, figure out what they want to do. But I don't have to do it. I become like a vendor manager almost.
Well,
for these people.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself that you're the GC, you're the general contractor.
Yes,
and
exactly.
all the rest of these are subcontractors on your job.
That's exactly what it is.
So
I have 2 questions that relate to this, because one of the things that sort of jumps up at me. One is, folks who are working independently like this is very new, from a technology standpoint, sort of type of job that's out there. I'm going to call it a job, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This gig.
Yeah, the gig.
The gig. So are the folks, and I know this is a very, it depends on the person, but are they structured enough and disciplined enough to, let's say, save for retirement? I know they're young,
right.
and it's a younger generation as we talk about the millennials, but there are items that I think of that are like these traditional type things that are they disciplined enough to do as well as, let's say, the generation that's out there now, which
What's
is...
the difference? I mean, it's not like the baby boomers.
We're not ready either,
They
right?
didn't do a particularly good job of,
have
taking care of their own, saving up for their retirement.
Well, I mean, they've done okay.
They all sat in cubicles.
I mean, they've done all right. I mean, I guess a lot of that was through pensions and things like that. But there is this sort of retirement economy
Yes.
that as a younger folk, middle age, even someone who's approaching those areas, are they is it like you're living for the day kind of thing?
These kids, they think that the Social Security is going to be broke by the time they're on their own anyway.
So yeah, I would say a couple of things. Number one is when you're first becoming a gig worker, you have so many things to figure out, right? There's so much to think about. And people who generally are gig workers or starting their own businesses like Design Mind Consulting, they need a track record of about 3 years to know this thing is going to stick, right? And they also have to have an exit strategy. Am I just going to do this forever, or am I building up my business to sell my business? Like, you have to have all of these things that you want to do. I right away got advisors for myself, because not only are you figuring out your business plan and your business strategy and your exit strategy, but you have to figure out your software. You have to figure out how to sell yourself. Like, you are the company.
Right.
So think about what a company does, accounting, sales, marketing, technology, like, you are the company. I think they really need to make sure that they're solid in that before they start thinking about some of the retirement things.
Of course.
Because like, even when I pay myself, I have to take half of that and put it in savings right away for tax time, right? That's a discipline. It's really, that alone is the first discipline that you have to think about. So I think those things will come. Also, our economy is not really well set up for gig workers.
Right.
So things like, the UX tax and labor processes and procedures, not set up for the gig economy at all. So, like for taxes, when an employee works for a company and it's time to pay Social Security and Medicare, the company pays 100, the employee pays 100. But the gig worker, because we're an employee business, we have to pay 200. So I have to pay 200 for every 100 that somebody pays in a business for a company. So we're already sort of taxed more, which starts to chip away at the money that you can make. The other thing is, healthcare. We have to buy all of our own healthcare. So within a company who pays for healthcare for their employees or partially pays, the amount of money that they pay towards healthcare benefits, employees don't pay income tax on that or anything like that. That's the benefit. And then when the employees paying their part of the healthcare, they can do it with pre-tax dollars. That's about a $300 billion asset to those companies and those employees every year. And a gig worker can't do that. Like, we have to pay for our health care. We can't deduct it on our taxes. A lot of people are using the Affordable Care Act, but that's shaky and it's always under attack. We can't use pre-tax dollars. So it's expensive to be a gig worker. Like, this is not easy to do.
You know what, there's two things, and actually one that is of huge interest to me just because years and years and years of doing this. It's funny that you mention, it's smart that you mention, not funny, about a gig worker or any sort of self-employed person who is buying medical insurance out in the free market. You're absolutely right. You are not allowed to deduct that off your income tax, which is there's a lot of single person shop that can't buy it as a group benefit because you're only one person, you're not a group. And as a result, you now buy it in the just open market with your own after-tax money.
Right.
It's like a bone crusher.
It
It's
is.
rough.
It really is.
It's smart that you bring that up. Those are, as these changes in our economy take place, they must be addressed.
They have
must
to
be.
think about these
Well, I think
things.
to the extent that any lobbyists are watching
I mean, that
the show, here's a what is apparently a gigantic constituency
Well,
yeah.
that
the
is
gig
completely
economy,
unrepresented.
It's like 50% of the working population
Is it
now.
50%
It's
of the working
50%.
population?
And that's also why I think, the unemployment numbers just came down as the lowest in 50 years at 3.5%.
Right, 'cause there's-
Yeah.
Well, it's because we're all working for
Nobody-
ourselves now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think those numbers are really skewed, and they're not looking at things that these
Well, they're not.
workers
It's not that
need.
they're skewed. It's that we need to change
There are
the
adjustments.
definitions.
Yeah.
We need to change the definitions.
That's
of
exactly what
Yeah.
it is.
Of
You're self-employed and you're paying.
full employment.
Yeah,
that's
Yes.
not a.
You know,
We're
it-
paying, yeah,
It's
exactly.
clear that you're working as an independent
Yep.
or as a sole proprietor, whatever.
Yep.
Those types of items that would have been written off at a big company in a group benefit that must be looked at.
Well,
I
and the
remember-
other thing is independent workers don't have any protection under the law against discrimination and harassment.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be working for a company on Monday, be laid off and go back on Tuesday, and you're no longer covered by the law for discrimination and harassment. That's a no-brainer, right? I mean,
Wait, say that again. That doesn't make any sense.
right.
Well,
I mean,
it's a function of that you're not protected because
I-
you're not under the auspices of the company.
Right, I
You're
under-
your own person.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
right, wrong, or indifferent. It
That's
exists,
the way
and
it
it probably
goes.
shouldn't be there
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that fashion.
well, one other thing that I want to, I like that we're touching on a number of things. This is great, actually. But you mentioned like some of the things where you might call a marketing person or something like that. So in this gig economy, is it like a barter system, or is there an exchange of commerce? Like, so if you need 4 or 5 people to handle a certain, so you have this group of people that you know and work with and can
Right.
share ideas with. Do those things get, when you work on a project, I'm assuming there's an exchange of commerce?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like a barter system.
It's not
where-
a barter
okay.
system. Since I'm a lot of the sales and marketing of this, obviously, and the strategy. So the people who are in my tribe of people, my user experience researchers and designers, they charge me.
Right.
I mark that up a bit, and then I charge the client.
Got it.
So, so it works really well. Like they know what their hourly rate is. They have that money coming in on a regular basis, and I can build up some of the money in the business. Now, when I work with my marketing person who's doing my marketing for me, I'm paying her from
Right.
Design Mind Consulting.
Sure.
She gets paid from that.
Got
So yeah, it's definitely around the e-commerce. No one's getting really rich this way, right? It's just that we have found that we have a passion for working with the people that we want to work with, working on the types of projects. And so no one's looking to get really rich. We're just looking to be happy and have that life balance.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you finally have a generation saying, you know what, I want to breathe a little,
Yes.
sigh of relief in terms of having some flexibility
Well,
in my
yeah,
life.
I mean, I agree. My oldest is, is a millennial.
Right.
She's the youngest millennial. She was born in '93, so she's just into the economy. Now she happens to be an engineer, but what's interesting is she, unlike people of my generation who, you put on the white shirt and the tie and you did
Yep.
what you did. She was in her first job. She's been in the workforce. She graduated in. I've lost track already, but she's been in the workforce for less than 3 years.
Yeah.
And she's now on her second job.
Right.
And she moved to her second job because, as an engineer, she could not stand the fact that she was spending her whole day designing parking lots and wiping out environments.
Green
so
space.
she moved.
Oh, that's
so she
awful.
moved to a company now where she's an engineer, but she designs water flow projects
That's
to make sure
awesome.
that the wetlands stay
Yeah.
where they're supposed to stay. So even within the non-gig economy
Yes.
aspect of that generation,
There's a thought
there's a complete change in thought in terms
Yeah.
of
Oh yeah.
how of following your passion I don't know what she gets paid if she makes a living.
Right.
I don't know if she took a pay cut for this new job or didn't, but I mean,
But you have to get up every day and go
that's
to
the one thing that college really doesn't
right?
train you for. If
It
you
really
think about
doesn't.
It. You can learn all the technical aspects
Yes.
Right.
of being a chemist, but you cannot be trained to answer the bell every day. And apparently, there's an entire generation who is saying, "I'm not going to do that."
Yeah.
I
somehow
I just spent the last 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, whatever, training to be what I am. And you know what? I did my work. I did my chemistry labs at 2:00 in the morning
Yes.
because that's what works for me.
And that's,
Exactly.
you know what though, and that's what you're starting to see. And I think this actually, if I had to guess, started to pick up a little bit. Even before the millennials, you had, not picking on women on any stretch, but you had what theoretically, like in the past, like this sort of classical sense of housewives going back to work,
Yeah.
but then saying, I still have kids to pick up at 3:00
Yep.
at the bus. Can I come in and work at 7 instead of 9? Like, why do I have to work at 9? I'm working on projects
Yeah.
here. Let me come in earlier. Can we design that flex schedule?
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
And
we have
employers
took
I mean,
to it
both of my admins come in at 7
and leave at
and
3.
leave at 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it just
Right,
It's,
and
it's
I
just
have-
how it is. It's just how the way the workforce. We had there was no when they came to me and said this is what we're going to do. There was no
Yes.
like.
It was
That doesn't
okay.
work for me. It
Right.
was okay. That's fine, and we'll just rotate the day.
Well, I
But that
think-
can be unusual, though. I mean, I'm telling you, I left a company for a number of reasons, but the final straw was, I was having some back issues. I asked if I could purchase on my own a portable standing desk.
Don't get him started.
I have
And
one.
I love my standing
Yeah.
desk. It didn't fall within the framework of their footprint in the office, so I wasn't allowed to even bring in my own. And I was like, all right.
That's a little rigid.
That seems a little rigid to me.
But
We're up against it.
Okay.
So you get the last word.
Yeah,
so
what's
tell
the-
us what
Design
is the
Mind
thing we need to know
Consulting.
about.
Right.
Design Mind Consulting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Design Mind Consulting, again, I love the concept of the company and all of these really, really smart people coming together to help other companies. I believe that every company and every person needs to figure out their purpose, right? My purpose is I love connecting people and I love making them successful, whether that's a business or a gig worker, right? So that really is my passion, which is why this works so well for me. It works great for companies because they get the best of the best without the expense of hiring people. And gig workers get so much experience in a lot of different industries that they can bring brilliant ideas into industries that haven't even thought that way. Like we can take something from financial and put it in supply chain that supply chain would have never thought of.
Interesting.
So it has so many different layers that work well for everybody. I think we just really have to look at some of the ways that we protect them, that we pay them, that they pay taxes, just to make sure that they can continue to be successful.
Right, give them a fair shot. So the best
Yes.
way to get in touch with you is just designmindconsulting.com, the
Yep.
website.
Yep, the website's out there, and there's a contact form right on the website, and you can get in touch with me that way.
That's terrific.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much.
you.
It's been a pleasure.
yeah, so on our way out, politics, we'll see how the kingdom goes. Maybe the villagers
What it
will-
occurs to me as we're headed into the final stretch here.
Yeah.
When these millennials, when the old dinosaurs move on,
Right.
and the people who created the gig economy
Right.
are stepping into what's going to happen then?
Well,
how's it going to be then? Is it going to be a free for all, or is it
No,
going to be, or is it going to be better?
I don't think so. I think they're sharpening their pitchforks right now.
Excellent.
So
Well,
I hope so.
I hope they are.
Charge the tower.
I agree.
So thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. We got to get out of here. RaceOnMain.com, DesignMindConsulting.com. Even more important, have a great week. We'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves.